Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome to my second beautiful flowers type video. I had edited the previous one before I got a chance to edit this one. So this one uses the Beautiful Flowers 2 stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. And if you missed my last video, I'll have it linked in the corner. I'll have it linked at the end, as always. But for this video, I am participating with this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. So what I'm doing is I have a piece of smooth white cardstock and I am ink blending on two different colors of Simon's dye ink. I have watermelon and then blue jay dye inks, and I have Simon's ink blending brushes. I specifically chose these inks to do this background because I didn't want them to blend too much together. These inks, even though they're dye inks, they're not water reactive like distress inks or other, water reactive inks that really will blend and move and react with water and all that stuff. These are very much similar to the formula of the Hero Arts inks, like their original inks anyway. So putting them on a background like this, the biggest thing to remember is these inks definitely smooth out more as they dry. So I always forget that when I do blended backgrounds with these inks. I'm always like, I kind of struggle and I'm like, why does this look so messy? And then I'll come back to it a little bit later and it's like, oh, this looks so much smoother and better. That's why. They literally, as they like kind of soak into the cardstock and whatnot, they smooth out. So I blended the colors on to the cardstock with those blending brushes. And then they still aren't fully dry, but that's irrelevant. Once they are fully dry, and you'll see the pictures at the end just how smooth they are. So after blending them, I am lining up that card front in my MISTI using one of the little L-shaped ruler, the MISTI Creative Corner. And then I'm stamping this great big floral image. This is from the Beautiful Flowers 2 stamp set. The last video used the original Beautiful Flower set. Either one would work, or any just large floral stamp, because there's so many of them now and I like to own them all. Each one is different. Each one is unique. But again, you can substitute if you don't have the exact ones. But anyway, I stamped it with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink and left it like that. I'm not going to actually color these images in, which is just a fun way, because I know sometimes too images like this are very intimidating. Like a lot of people don't like to color or don't feel comfortable coloring or need more practice, etc. But doing things like this is so simple, like just doing a nice blended background. Anyone can do it. So I did the stamping and then I added some splatter using my Prima metallic set. I just used the white shimmery paint from that and added the splatter. You could use any sort of white paint. I just wanted that tiny little bit of shimmer. Nothing too crazy. But any white paint would also work. And then I'd made sure it was completely dry. I let that shimmer sit and completely dry before I die cut it with one of the A2 thin frames wafer dies from Simon, because again, I'm kind of obsessed with those lately. So I die cut the card front with that, and I'd also die cut some Nina Desert Storm cardstock. And then I have more Desert Storm cardstock that is my card base. And I basically folded the card backwards so that I could fit it in my MISTI where I had aligned the card front, because I want to stamp this flower on the inside again, because I loved how much it worked on the previous card. I inked up the stamp with that same khaki ink, because the look of the khaki ink on Desert Storm cardstock is just perfection to me. So I lined up the card base, inked up the stamp with the khaki ink, missed a couple spots. This is where the MISTI is just so wonderful. I was able to just kind of re-ink up those little areas and then press them and stamp that onto the card. And then I'm going to just move my card base now properly onto the bottom portion basically of the MISTI. And then I'm going to line up a sentiment this is from the Handwritten Love set. This is another oldie but goodie favorite that I've used so many times. So I lined up the sentiment and I'm going to stamp that sentiment with that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. So stamp that onto the inside of the card. And then I'm going to start adhering the pieces of card front to the outside of the card. So I'm going to use craft tacky glue to first adhere kind of the outer portion of the frame, because that's the one you need to get kind of lined up to make sure everything else fits properly on the card. So I line that up first, and then I'm going to add the craft tacky glue to the inner area. And I know I sound like a broken record, but I know not everyone watches every single video. I'm basically adding a very thin amounts of glue. I'm not like, you know, squeezing a bunch of glue into this, because the last thing you want is glue oozing out around all these die cut pieces and just making a huge mess. So I'm inlaying the little frame that I cut from the Desert Storm cardstock, and then inlaying the remaining piece of my blended background with the flowers on it. And then once I've got that into place, I wasn't going to add that remaining little frame to the inside, but then I was like, oh, and I had to make sure that the sentiment was stamped like low enough, because I was like, oh crap, this isn't going to work. But the sentiment was just in the right spot. It all just kind of came together. So I was able to add adhesive to this little frame and actually adhere this to the inside of the card as well, just like I did in the last video. Really love how that looks. It just kind of ties it all together. So I lined that up with the like inside of the card, as well as using kind of the stamped image as my guide to make sure this was sort of lined up here. It's another reason why I love this craft tacky glue, because you know, since I had to move the frame around a bit, I got glue, you know, in areas where I didn't want it. I just rubbed it off with my fingers and it's good to go. It doesn't leave like that tacky residue, even though it's called craft tacky glue. Don't be mistaken, I don't find it to be tacky after it's completely dry. It's just fine. So anywho, I stacked my sentiments. This is the Bold Thanks wafer die, and I die cut 3 layers from just some scraps of the Desert Storm cardstock, and I adhere those together. And then the top layer is going to be white cardstock, because that was the color challenge for this week, was basically kind of a pink shade, blue, craft, and white, which honestly I had struggled with at first. And then when I started like pulling this card together, everything just worked. Like, really like it. So got my sentiment all nice and stacked, and I'm going to adhere this to the card front. And I know this is shocking. This was it. I didn't add any bling. I kept this as more of a masculine card. I like using florals for masculine cards as well. Yeah, I buy my fiance flowers every once in a while. He loves flowers. Who doesn't love flowers? I do anyway. So I kept this a little more masculine, not as crazy blingy as the last one. If you want some crazy bling and you haven't seen my last video, check it out, because that one's got the sparkle and the bling. So anywho, I will have links below the video to my blog post and links to all the supplies used, so you can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!